Hi, everyone, and welcome to Cancer Awareness, brought to you by The Advocate. Today, we are coming to you from Baton Rouge to talk about something that impacts so many lives, cancer, and more importantly, the survivor journey and how it has all changed. I'm Kim Holden. Today's cancer care goes far beyond just treatment. It's about helping people live well after diagnosis, physically, emotionally, and fully supported. We're joined by three outstanding physicians, and they help make all of that possible every day. So let's introduce them. Dr. Pavani Ellipeddi, a medical oncologist who supports patients through and beyond treatment with compassion and innovation. Also, Dr. Gerald Militello, a hematologist oncologist known for personalizing cancer treatment and guiding patients through every phase of care. And Dr. Kelly Finan, a colorectal surgeon focused on early detection, advanced surgical care, and helping patients return to life with confidence. Thank you for being here. Let's get started.
Thanks for having me.
So I'd like to start with just a general question that I'd like for all of you to answer. And we can start with you, Dr. Ellipeddi. What does the cancer survivor journey look like today versus 10 to 15 years ago?
It's dramatically different. I would say that cancer survivorship journey right now is more personalized, and it definitely is very different than it was 15 years ago, where after the conclusion of treatment, patients felt that they were done, and they didn't have any guidance in terms of what comes next in terms of follow-ups or support system. But now it's very, very different. I would say that we actually start off, and once the patient is diagnosed with cancer, we start off with plan for survivorship. So it begins when actually the way that it changed is it begins with the diagnosis, and have a thorough plan about not just the treatment, but after curing and life after cancer.
It's okay. Do you have it, Biden?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think if you define survivorship from the time you get diagnosed, you want to survive your disease, but it's the rest of your life after. So, I can only speak really to colorectal cancer, but I think we have learned so much with genetics and immunology that even when someone is diagnosed, some of our therapies even vary because we can really study the tumor itself and see how your tumor is going to respond. Whereas 15 years ago, it was kind of rote treatment. Like, you have this cancer, you're getting this therapy. We still have first line therapies and stuff, but I think we can, y'all can speak to that better, but just even with like the chemotherapy and immunotherapy, we can really specify it. And I think we just have a lot more advanced diagnostics to determining the treatment. But then after treatment, I think it was like, okay, high five, you made it through. But now we know that, the treatment is not, like going and getting a haircut, like, oh, you're just totally fine. Like chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, these all have long-term side effects for patients. And patients have been through an emotional toil, often a financial toil, a lot of family stress, just trying to get through all this. And so I think now we're focusing more on like, how do we rehab and, just help support that patient. I can say a lot of patients have extremely life-changing events. Okay, oh my gosh, why did I get this cancer? I haven't been focusing on my health for so long. So it can be a huge turning point. I think a lot of people really recognize the importance of their relationships, and maybe they were spending too much time at work. So I think just really focusing on the whole person. We want to look at the emotional, the mental, the physical, the financial. And so I think there's just a lot more resources, and really, I think that's where a lot more research and focus is going. Too, on this whole survivorship, and we have a survivorship program. We just hosted an event this week, honoring a lot of those survivors, and have one coming up at the end of the month. Actually, June, I think the beginning of June, there was a New England Journal of Medicine article, finally a randomized controlled trial showing the benefit of exercise after chemotherapy in colon cancer patients, and a prescribed exercise program we know actually decreases the risk of recurrence and improves overall survival. And we now have a study showing this. So, to me, that's exciting. And it's crazy that I feel like it's taken this long for us to focus, but I think we're so focused on trying to cure cancer, but now we want to prevent it from coming back, and we want to improve quality of life. And so I think it's kind of an exciting time. Like we're really, I think that's a big focus is the ongoing care after.
Okay. And what about you? The survivor journey today versus 15 years ago?
I think the biggest thing that's changed is 15 years ago when people were diagnosed with cancer, most of the cancers, people weren't going to be around 15 years from now. Today, I've got people with stage 4 lung cancer that are out 4 and 5 years and doing great. Whereas 15 years ago, they could have been, most of them were dead in 2 years. So I think now we're starting from day one. No, you can't sit around. You have to stay active. And so we start talking about nutrition, I think is real important, and the exercise. And as Kelly was just saying, the New England Journal article, it's a great article, and we've been preaching this for years. I mean, you really have to stay active. We were doing a program a few years ago where patients were in the hospital for 5 days with high-dose interleukin. They would stay in the bed for 5 days. Well, I realized at the end of 5 days, they couldn't walk. They weren't getting up. And so we changed that after about 3 years where you have to get up and walk around in the hall or do something. Changed everything. So exercise is, I think, one of the biggest things we do now that we didn't do years ago. And 15 years ago, a lot of patients were sedated when they took treatments. They were rolled out in a wheelchair to their cars after the treatment. Now, the drugs we have for nausea and vomiting, people leave alert. They're laughing and talking while they're doing the treatments. But trying to keep people leading a normal life while they're taking treatments is the key, not letting them play sick.
I love that, yes. When we talk about treatment plans, Dr. Ellipeddi, what does a survivorship plan include?
A survivorship plan is like a roadmap for life after cancer. If I have to say, of all, basically it's personalized from for patient to patient, but if I have to start with, typically it includes summary of treatment plan or treatment history, whatever they had. Second thing is schedules for follow-ups, not only routine, but also screening. And third thing is to give us a guidance for management of long-term side effects. Could it be physical, emotional, cognitive, any of those? Wow. So it also actually addresses fertility issues, health, exercise, diet, nutrition, mental health. And most of the time, in most circumstances, going back to work. All this, it helps with all this. And most importantly, I think it connects the cancer care team with the primary care team so that the long-term coordinated plan is in place, and we can pick up on long-term side effects easily and manage them before affecting the quality of life. All in all, I would say that the goal here is to not just survive, but thrive after cancer.
Yeah, that's a good goal.
Yeah.
Survivorship does look different today. Dr. Militello, how has personalized treatment changed the patient experience long-term?
The toxicities are much less. Some of the new targeted therapies we have, patients don't experience half the toxicity they used to experience. They just don't get so debilitated like they used to be. And like I said, I encourage my patients to keep their jobs. I very seldom tell someone to stop working. If there's any way, even if you've got an understanding boss, and 95% of the bosses will work with their employees. Very seldom do we run across someone who, but I try and keep everybody working at least 90% of the time if they can. I saw a teacher before I came here.
It's so much mental.
It's
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
You don't need to focus on dying. You need to focus on living. And it really makes a difference if you keep people active.
Okay. Dr. Finan, colorectal cancer, highly treatable when it is caught early. We know that. How has screening and prevention improved outcomes?
Well, I mean, it's just made a tremendous effect because, there's a lot of cancers we might do screening tests for to just catch. The beauty of colon cancer is it's actually a really slow-growing cancer. Typically, it will take 10 years for a polyp to develop into a cancer. And so with use of surveillance, especially colonoscopy in particular, we can actually prevent colon cancer. So that's why, we advocate so heavily for people to go get screened and to go get a colonoscopy because, we're screening for cancers. But every time I do a scope, I tell people, like, I'm trying to prevent cancers in you. Because if I can find these precancerous polyps and remove them, they won't grow into a cancer. I mean, obviously, there's been a huge rise in early onset cancers. So we're seeing cancers in younger patients. So unfortunately, they're not always within the screening age. And there are some genetic cancers that might arise faster. But when we can catch a colon cancer, even when it's stage 1 for colon or for rectal, the primary treatment is just surgery. And it has such a high cure rate that we don't even recommend chemotherapy for any of those people. So, we want to prevent the cancer before you get it. But if we can catch those stage 1 cancers, I mean, they can be curable with just surgery alone. The more advanced cancers, we have to employ a lot more treatment strategies. They obviously have a higher risk of spread to other organs, and they have a lower survivability. So, just really advocate for that early detection. We have done a tremendous improvement in our state. We've been trying to increase our screening rates. And there are just people who won't go get a colonoscopy. So that still is the standard of care, and really recognizing that a colonoscopy is really the only test that's going to help with prevention. But there's a lot of other tests that can help with detection. So the Cologuard is a new test out there. It's where you just submit a stool sample, you poop in a box, mail it to the company, literally. And it's very sensitive at detecting cancer. One thing people don't realize is it's very poor at detecting polyps. So it's not a good prevention test. But if you're scared for some reason, can't take a day off of work, get a colonoscopy, it is, a good test. And I think ultimately American Cancer Society and other organizations realize that like any test is better than no test. So I think that, and especially with access to care sometimes, we've really improved. So we're nearly at 80% in the state in screening. So that's tremendous. And that's going to help improve our, cure rate, survivability, because it is a very high, prevalent cancer.
80% is pretty high.
Yeah. That's what we've been shooting for like, I think, the last 15 years. But we're
yeah. And 45 is new 50?
Yeah. So now we changed this probably 5-6 years ago. There was 2 different recommendations that came out, but screening age was lowered to 45. So everyone should start screening at the age of 45. And if you have a family history of a first-degree relative, like your mom or dad, sibling with a polyp or a cancer, you should really start 10 years younger. So, if, I had a polyp at 35, and so I called my siblings and asked them all to go get screened. So, I think that's also an important thing. And one thing that probably has also changed in the last 15 years is we talk about things more. I think social media and publicity and like the NFL getting behind breast cancer, everyone does it. Colon cancer is slowly creeping in. It's still not coffee table talk. But I mean, at my house it is.
I hear people talking about colonoscopies all the time. I don't know what that says about my group of friends.
Because I think everyone used to be so like scared to talk about cancer, to talk about things. And so, we've broken new ways. There was like a whole barbershop trend to get all the barbers to talk to men about getting prostate screening. And we've through the cancer community, we've introduced new ways. But I think with, just getting a lot of media attention behind things and doing stuff like this for us, it just helps because we need to normalize to talk about your health. We need to normalize to talk about like cancer prevention, wellness, care. Are you taking care of yourselves? And we need to, encourage our family members, our friends, like go get screened. And if you're scared about it, let me talk with you about my experience, or go talk to the doctor. Just encouraging people to listen to their bodies and take care of themselves.
Good. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the early detection. If people, you can cure colon cancer if you detected stage 1. You can't cure stage 4, and patients are still scared of colonoscopies. And once colonoscopy is so easy, the preparation is not
that won't accept treatment for cancer, and the number of people that are so scared to get a screening test. So I always just try to point that out. Like if you. Like not getting a screening test isn't going to prevent you from not getting cancer.
Right.
And when you get that cancer, I know you're going to run in here and let me treat you. So let me try to prevent it.
Yeah. You're
And
right.
sometimes patients get confused between Cologuard and colonoscopy being equal. It's not. I mean, something's better than nothing, but it cannot be replaceable with the colonoscopy.
Let's do the minimum if you're scared.
Yeah.
At least. What role does family and community support play after treatment ends? And I'll ask all of you the same question. Dr. Militello?
Oh, it's vital. Having family support and friend support. And it's interesting, I've had patients tell me getting diagnosed with cancer and starting treatments, they sometimes, excuse me, change friends. Some of their friendships change because people don't know what to say to cancer patients sometimes, and they'll come to them and say, oh, my friend had what you had. Yeah, they died. Or my best, and it's, so it's not uncommon for people. Some people have a group of friends that stick with them throughout, but it's not uncommon for patients to change friends, usually family support, but you can't go this alone. You have to have support, and it's so nice when patients come in and they'll bring 2 or 3 people with them for their treatments or their office visits, and the support is, this is not a disease you can do alone. And as I was telling someone, and then God plays a major role. I mean, I've seen one atheist in the years I've been doing this, and even that person converted before they died. And it's just, I can't stress how important family and support is. Family and friends, and I find it 50-50. Some people have more friends than family. Had a lady came in this afternoon and her friends were with her. And I said, where's your family? She said, well, they're there, but these are my support. And so,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just invaluable. Sometimes it's hard, people always want to be the caregiver, and it's sometimes it's hard to accept that help. So I feel like I have to point out, like, you would take care of your spouse, right? Let them help take care of you. But yeah, I think ironically, it's the worst thing that can happen to people, but I've had so many just incredibly meaningful conversations with patients that they really found a value in their life after their diagnosis, because it really made them stop and reflect, oh my gosh, if I survive this, what does the future need to look like? I've had numerous patients tell me that while they never wanted to get cancer, getting cancer saved their marriage. And it's just crazy because they're like, I was just growing apart from my spouse. We weren't really supporting each other. We weren't having meaningful conversations. I mean, that's just wow, this cancer changed the trajectory of your life and your marriage too. So, I think it really, it can be a big turning point, but it's something so critical. I mean, it's threatening, and it just makes you stop and really reflect and maybe just slow down and say okay, what's important to me now?
Brings a lot of clarity into your life. And what do you tell people who, there are a lot of people who are really private when they get a cancer diagnosis. I've had friends, they didn't want anybody to know, even though we would say, well, but more people could pray for you, but they're just very private. So what do you tell people when they don't want that support?
I mean, some people are private. I mean, but we try to encourage them. We try to encourage them to talk because we have seen the therapy. I mean, it's therapeutic when you reach out to friends and family, but sometimes it could be not possible, and that's where I think I introduce peer groups, social support groups, even if it is Facebook or online. So that can actually, they don't have to know personally, but there is a good way to get that support system and see others how they are dealing with their own issues. I'm
sure there are a million support groups on Facebook for cancer.
Yep.
I haven't looked lately, but I'm sure there are.
and some of them are good. Some of them aren't so good. Some of them scare people. I mean, you have to be careful. There's some real good ones out there, but few people get into some bad support groups.
You got to find the right one.
You got to find the right
Not
one.
just random Google search.
But what Kelly was saying, I think 90% of the patients I've had tell me having cancer, as much as I hated it, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. It's changed my whole life. It really does put things into perspective. Things that you took for granted, you now take serious. And I had a patient before I came here today said, this cancer is the best thing that I never thought I would say. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me. And
That's just so crazy to hear that.
it really,
Exactly.
really is.
Okay, what do you see as the biggest challenge that a survivor faces after their treatment ends? And how do you help them navigate that phase? Because as we said, it doesn't end when they ring the bell and, the cancer is gone. What happens after? And what is the biggest challenge, Dr. Militello?
And about half the patients, they get on with their lives, and you just support them once they get over the toxicities. If they have neuropathy, it's the half that is worried about the cancer coming back. And I've got several patients who literally can't function. So trying to find, because they're so obsessed, is the cancer coming back? How do you know it's not coming back? And so it's getting people like that in support groups. Sometimes drugs will help people to get through this, at least the first 6 months to a year. Exactly. But just trying to get them back to doing the things they did before. If they didn't have hobbies, you develop a hobby. If you weren't exercising, start exercising. But I think a lot of it depends on the patient. And a lot of patients, you can say, come back in 3 months. I have other patients come back in a month. And just to keep reinforcing the positive aspects of it. And it does make a difference. But drugs, friends, support groups, and finding something else to do. Sitting around the house is the worst thing anyone can do. So no matter if you're retired, play tennis, do something, get a hobby.
Sure, most patients are wondering, will it come back?
Yeah.
Right.
It's always going to be in the back of your head.
Right.
You can't let it dictate what you do in life.
Right. And most people can get by after, it takes about 2 years after you've finished everything to really say, you don't think about it all the time. But there's some people who just can't get it out of their heads. And that's when drugs help.
Dr. Finan, how have surgical advancements changed recovery and long-term quality of life for survivors?
Oh, I mean, it's, significant, like over the course of my training and practice, like over the last 20 years. So initially, a lot of patients were always having to have a big open incision. So a lot of the pain and recovery with surgery, I think people always think about like how many organs are coming out or what you're doing in there, but it's really more like abdominal wall trauma. Because that causes a lot of pain and immobility. And then if people aren't mobile, their bowels sometimes aren't working right and they can get deconditioned. So, really we're doing a lot of the same surgeries that we've been doing the whole time, but as we introduce minimally invasive surgery. So we started off with laparoscopic surgery and we proved that it had the same oncologic outcome or cancer outcome. And then robotics have been introduced. So through that, we can do just little poke hole incisions like the size of your pen, about 8 millimeters, and we can put little poke holes in. And with a robot, laparoscopic, it was like straight sticked instruments. So you're trying to operate like this. And with robots, we have wristed instruments. And so it gives you just so much more mobility. So we can do these huge surgeries, but just through little poke holes. Now, for my surgeries, I have to actually remove the bowel. So I usually do like a little bikini cut incision, about 6 or 7 centimeters, about the length of my index finger. And we can actually remove it. So when we do this, we have people up walking that night. We feed them immediately after surgery. Most of my patients go home. It kind of depends, on the extent of surgery, but I would say on average about 2 days, some 1, some 3. But we have them out moving around. And, I think we've also used a lot of stuff in conjunction with these more minimally invasive surgeries, enhanced recovery protocols. So we prepare people, like what's going to happen before surgery. We try to prehabilitate them, like get out and exercise, start eating healthy. You need to quit smoking before your surgery, all those things. We prepare them what to do after surgery and then when they get home. And so I think that in and of itself, and trying to just have upfront pain management. So we're kind of keeping people more even keel instead of up and down. They'll be a lot more mobile. So I actually find more than not, people are like, okay, well, I'll just bounce back to work right away. And I have to remind people, your body, even if I do it through little incisions, your body's still sucking up energy to heal. So give yourself the grace of like, a month off of work, or depending on what your work schedule looks like, to recover. But so I think that's dramatically helped people. And we actually, even for some rectal cancers now, for a stage 2 or 3 rectal cancer, we actually start with neoadjuvant therapy. So patients have to get chemotherapy and radiation. And while that's not non-toxic, that still has its own host of side effects. We're finding upwards of 40 to 50% of people can be cured with that. So we can actually, better yet than minimally invasive surgery, we can offer non-operative management for a lot of these more advanced rectal cancers, which is just huge when people can keep their rectum. So it helps a lot more with GI function long-term, clearly. So, I think the minimally invasive surgery really, while we're still doing the same oncologic care, it just helps with faster return to function, less pain, and it causes less scar tissue. So patients are showing up a lot less with bowel obstructions and stuff down the line.
Yes. And we see them after your surgery, right? So they're like 2 weeks, 3 weeks into it, they're not seeing a big incision there. So psychologically, it helps a lot. They're like, I'm already back to feeling myself. They're feeling 100%, even though it's the same procedure and everything. It's just the wound not being there plays a major role psychologically.
Physical and psychological, for sure. Well, Dr. Ellipeddi, what are the long-term effects today of cancer therapies that survivors should be prepared for?
So the cancer treatments made a lot of advances. With that, we are seeing patients live longer, which is a great success. But that means that we are also seeing patients with long-term side effects, delayed side effects. The long side effects can vary based upon what kind of cancer we treated and what kind of therapy we gave. But if I have to say in general, it's fatigue, could last for months to years after therapy. Cognitive changes like chemo brain can last for several years. We see neuropathy, numbness, tingling. That could be one debilitating condition that we see for long term. Depending upon chemo or radiation, whatever you use, some can cause cardiac and lung toxicity. With the newer drugs, with the immunotherapy, we are seeing a lot of endocrine problems, hypothyroidism and other things. So all this, and rarely, but secondary cancers from the previous treatments. So I feel that bottom line, quality, to maintain the quality of life, it's follow-up is the key. They need to have a long-term follow-up plan to monitor, for a survivorship plan in place to monitor and identify the side effects before they can affect the quality of life.
Is there ever a time where that long-term plan says, okay, that's it, you're good, no more follow-up? At what point does that happen?
With oncology, yes. Sometimes 5 to 10 years, we have a stop date, but again, it's about coordinating between the primary care team and the oncology care team so that we have a probably, now we are seeing for such early stage cancers, we are seeing a very long-term survival. So there should not be a stop date.
This question is for everybody. How is care changing to support not just survival, but quality of life after cancer? And we've kind of touched a little bit on this already. So, Dr. Militello.
Our goal is to get people back to a baseline or better once they've recovered from their treatments. And it just makes a difference in whether people start living again. But most people, we find, once they've recovered, they will get on with their lives and go on to doing traveling, going back to work, and offering support to other patients. That's one of the bigger things we see with patients, helping other people get through the treatments. And it's having a buddy is a big thing with a lot of our patients. They just to be able to see someone who survived what they had and knowing that they had the same thing 5 years ago and look at me now. That's real important to patients. Even though you tell them you can live forever with this, when you put someone in front of them, that makes a big difference. And I find that real helpful with patients.
I'm sometimes just trying to help people identify, well, what are their goals? Like, what do you want? Because this is now your new norm. So, a lot of my patients, I've had to resect part of their GI tract. So, I jokingly say, I hope you remember me fondly, but you will probably remember me every day the rest of your life because I've changed your bowel function. And so hopefully it's for the better and you're cancer free. But, it's just like, okay, how are we going to deal with this? And for a lot of my patients, I have to help them understand, like, okay, their goals are to, like, have good bowel function and not have urgency or something. So I'm like, well, you have to change your diet then. Like, you're going to have to eat well to have good bowel function. Or, if they have some physical abnormalities, sometimes we have to have them be doing physical therapy, to help improve muscle function. Some of it's been damaged from radiation and or surgery. And so, I think it's just trying to establish sometimes that goals of care and what do they want? Because then they're going to be motivated to do it. And sometimes you're like, okay, let's give it 3 months, 6 months, come back and see me. Like, here's options of things we can do if you just want to see how things level out. But I think it's also just, you have to employ the individual person. Like, what is your goals? Where are you trying to get? And sometimes even like those goals of care can even determine sometimes for me, like a patient's elect, like I'd just rather have a permanent colostomy. I'm trying to think of a patient in particular. He's like, it's so important to me to keep being an umpire. Like, I love roughing these young baseball games, but I have to be out there for hours. And I'm like, well, if we do a low connection, you might have urgency, you need to get to the bathroom quickly. He's like, and with the colostomy, I wouldn't have to do that. I'm like, no. So, I think sometimes it's also talking up front with patients, like if it's surgical, like, what is your goals? What does your quality of life look like for you? What are you willing to accept? And then afterwards, again, just working individually with the patient, because it's not always just one and done, but we do know we have a lot of other resources that we can help people improve things, but they have to be engaged too.
Dr. Ellipeddi?
I totally agree with them both. Yeah, I think it's all covered.
Okay. So let's talk about how, and Dr. Militello, you talked about this a little bit, but how do you help patients manage the fear of recurrence? I'll let you start.
Yeah. Fear of recurrence is one of the most common and understandable concerns of any survivor. I think, first of all, it's to acknowledge the emotion, telling them they're not alone, telling the patient they're not alone, and we totally get it, and we are here to support them. And it's okay to feel that way. And we sometimes offer tools. I talk about counseling or therapy, especially with psycho-oncologists. We need a little bit more here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. But second thing is mindfulness. Techniques like journaling sometimes helps, and breathing techniques, just to help that scan anxiety or fear of recurrence. Especially it happens the fear of recurrence usually during the scan time is where I see that scan anxiety is a real term there. Mm-hmm. So helping them with these tools like that, and sometimes just having the appointments made ahead helps in terms of like having a little of control and what to expect, and having a little control on the schedule where we know that we're going to have this scans done and we're going to discuss this, that can help some with the anxiety about the recurrence or about the images that we're going to discuss. And sometimes just it's I think these are the coping techniques that I try. Having it helps with discussing a thorough plan about the survivorship. That kind of gives them the sense of control and reassurance that, okay, we'll have a plan for monitoring. If something happens, we'll be picked up early, survivorship plan laid out very detailedly in early part of treatment plan. So that's all I can think of. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, it's different with every patient. I've got a few patients who said I focus on denial. I had the cancer, I had my treatment, it's over, and as far as I'm concerned, it's gone. And I said, if living in denial keeps you going and functioning every day, you don't have to. There's some people who literally can't get it out of their heads. And I've had patients tell me, well, I had cancer, it's over. As far as I'm concerned, I never had it, and I'm not going to worry about it. Yeah. I'm coming for my checkups, it's your problem. And they do perfectly fine. It's very interesting because it's all different. I mean, no two patients are the same.
Yeah.
You've got the 90-year-old who's stage 4 colon cancer, who's gone about their business like nothing's wrong with them. And then you have someone else who's worried every day, am I going to die? Am I going to die? But it's interesting to see how the different personalities manage it. Yeah. Everybody has their own way of managing it. Some people you have to help guide, and that's when drugs sometimes play a role.
Drugs earlier, you're talking about anxiety.
Anxiety drugs, antidepressants, and not long term, but sometimes if you can just get people for 2 or 3 months just to get over the hump, then they seem to work.
Yeah. If I may add, it's hard, but trying to empower them from like changing the mindset from fear to live your life. I mean, changing thought process about how you have reminding them how far they have come, and how to enjoy the life while to do things that are under their control, like especially. Coming back to exercise, adequate BMI is one of the most common things, clinical trials-wise, that's the most effective way to prevent the cancer from coming back. So things like that. I mean, it's hard, but, we try our best to try to change shift the mindset.
Yeah, I think just trying to help provide support. I think sometimes when patients come to us, like it's hard to maybe talk about this even with their support group, because they're like, okay, well, I beat it. So I find honesty goes a long way. Like, I don't ever try to sugarcoat things. I'm like, it's your life, and I'm always gonna be 100% honest. Like, I'm never gonna know something I'm not gonna share with you. And I personally think a mindset plays a whole lot in survival and fighting things. I really think it affects people's outcomes. We know now, we've been scientifically proven that exercise, but like healthy living, healthy exercise, and even all my cancer survivors, every time they come in, I do try to address their weight, not to be, poignant, but I know that affects them. And we also know that like exercise is going to improve mood and outcome. And I think just also like, I tell people, don't get so fixated on statistics and all this. Like, all you ever have to be is on the winning side. So, right. You just want to be on the winning side. So just trying to get with your life. And, and a lot of people have put things off during their year plus of treatment. So I'm like, well, what do you, once they get there, like, what are you going to do? Like, plan ahead, plan fun things, plan to live, don't plan to die. And so I think just trying to support people, but yeah, everyone's going to manage it different. But I think, being supportive of them and just, being honest with them too.
And also there's so much out there on the internet too. Do y'all find that your patients are I'm not going to say more educated, because it's not all educational, but they go down rabbit holes.
They do.
Searching for their diagnosis and what to do and how to do it. It may not be the part of the treatment plan. Has that been an issue?
Yeah, and I always say angry people sit at home and write on the internet. People that are happy are outliving their life. Like, go be one of the happy people, quit reading all this. Or read at least informed sources. Yeah. Like, I'll give them, like, here are some good sources. Right. That you can read that are like acceptable. You don't want to just kind of go down like, where'd you get this information?
Dr. Google.
Yes.
Dr. Google is our biggest enemy. Yes. He's our biggest competitor. Everybody comes in with a list of things, and so we have to, like Kelly said, I will give them this is a good website to go to if you want information on this, but please don't just
find the right.
And that's when chat rooms sometimes are bad too.
Yeah.
Because,
Okay. How do you balance hope and realism when talking to patients about living beyond cancer, Dr. Militello?
I think everybody needs hope. I believe in hope, optimism with every cancer patient. But then I always give them, if someone has an incurable illness, and I'm as honest as I can be with them. I think they need to know, but also need to know you can't focus on dying, you need to focus on living. But giving, as long as you're alive, there's hope. I mean, and that's what I always reinforce with patients. I mean, you could walk out of here and die today, but the hope is the most important thing. Realism, I always start I will give them all of the facts, and then after that, I don't focus on it every visit. Okay, you know this disease is going to kill you. You know you're going to die from this. And most patients will tell me, I will ask you, I've had patients tell me, I don't want to know life expectancy. That's your job. Please don't tell me. And family members will come in and say, well, how long are they going to live? Well, they don't really want to discuss this.
Not at this time, at least.
It's just amazing. But I'm always very honest with patients, and they will tell you, if you're honest with them, they will tell you, please tell me if you think I'm going to be dead in the next 6 months. And I've had patients tell me, I don't want to know. Just you. And when the end comes, patients, they know. Someone, I don't know, a little bird tells them, God tells them, but they know, they seem to all know that the time is coming to an end. But I think where there's life, there's hope, and that's what I preach to all of my patients.
I love that. Okay, one last question, and I'd like all of you to answer this. What is one thing you wish every patient knew before starting treatment? Dr. Ellipeddi, we'll start with you.
Yeah.
One thing every patient should know, or you wish they knew before starting treatment.
Yeah. I wish everybody knew that the whole team is behind them to help them, not just with the treatment, but life after that. They're not alone in this. And as treating team, that's one thing I feel. And second thing is that the cancer cannot dictate the life. There is more beyond that. So though life may feel uncertain, but at that moment, but there is hope, and there is they can everywhere live the life to fullest, still while feeling not certain with the diagnosis.
Dr. Finan?
I mean, I think that was very well said. I don't know if I could put it better. But yeah, I think everyone just needs to realize that, it's an individual journey. And, a lot of people want to live in the what if? Oh, could I? And I'm always, well, here's where we are today, and here's where we want to go, and here's what our goals are. And I think it's always just good for everyone to also understand that, past decisions, health choices, whatever, are in the past, and that they still can affect their care and their future by, turning the ship around, starting to eat healthier, take care of themselves, exercise through their treatment, and it can actually change the outcome of their treatment. So I also like to focus on that. And I think I also, kind of depending on the patient, for me, also try to give people a timeline expectation. Like, someone comes to me with a stage 1 colon cancer, we're going to operate on you in the next 4 weeks, and you're going to probably need 6 weeks to recover, and you're going to go on with life. Whereas someone with a stage 2 rectal cancer, we're going to do 5 weeks of chemoradiation. We're going to go on to more chemo. We're going to do surgery. You're probably going to have a diverting ostomy. We're going to do a second surgery to reverse it. And I like to put it into perspective, it's going to take a year. And here's where your breaks are going to be. So I think just trying to give people expectations of what the expected treatment plan will be. And then with the, for colorectal cancer, at least, it's a 5-year surveillance plan. So try to give people that expectation so they can kind of plan around it, I think is helpful. But I think just, giving them upfront information and just trying to help them with their health. Yeah, well, just help them with their health and wellness to help them get it through it the best. Just because they've smoked for 30 years doesn't mean they have to smoke through the next year. They could try to hey, maybe I should quit this and it will actually help.
Yeah. I agree with what they said. I think the biggest thing is a lot of the older people, when their parents were diagnosed with cancer, they all died. And I think the biggest thing I preach to people, having cancer is not a death sentence. 30 years ago, it probably was in the majority of cases. I mean, the only cancer we were curing 30 years ago was testicular cancer, which only accounted for about 2% of the cancers. Now we've got people with chronic myelogenous leukemia who everyone died in 4 years. Now they're out 20 years and still going. So I think reinforcing to them, no, you have cancer, but you don't have a death sentence. You have excellent chances. I'd rather have cancer than some of the other diseases these days. So I think just reinforcing that to them. And because some people will come in and say, I'm not taking treatment. I saw what it did to my mother and I saw what it did to my father. And just an education thing is the biggest thing, is educating them on how things have changed and how they've changed in the last 5 years compared to even 10 years ago and 30 years ago. Since I've been doing this for 30 years, it's like night and day. When I went into practice, when I started training, I had every chemotherapy drug triple spaced on an 8x11 sheet of paper. It was like 15 drugs. I knew all of the drugs by heart. I knew the dosages. And now it's like, it's overwhelming.
And you don't know them by heart? You don't know them by heart anymore?
I don't know them by heart anymore.
Well, and one of the crazy things is, people are living older and older. So,
Right.
I was trying to, people are, well, how did I get this? So, there can't be some genetics, but some of it is, there's, police in our body that survey and they kill cells that go awry. And as we get older, those police don't work as well. So, people are living longer and longer. So more and more people are getting cancer. And the craziest statistic, I had to give a talk last year, if you look up your risk of cancer. Now, this is all cancer. So it could be like a little squamous cell cancer. So it's not all aggressive cancers. And I'm going to be sorry if I don't quote, it's male and female, but one was 1 in 3 and one was 1 in 2. And I forget. But I was like, holy cow, like that's how high our percentage of cancer is.
Yeah.
These guys are going to be in business forever. But, it is crazy. Your likelihood of getting cancer, it's about half the room sometimes, and it might be minor cancers. But so we all just need to be doing surveillance. And I think that people are like, oh, well, cancer doesn't run in my family. Well, that does not matter. And that's why also people really need to stick up with surveillance. So for colorectal cancer, it's through the age of 75. And if you're healthy, through the age of 85. So a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm done getting colonoscopies at 69. I was like, oh no. Do you know how many 80-year-olds I'm operating on now with colon cancer? And so I think it's just, people also need to recognize that cancer is very prevalent. You have a a very high likelihood of getting some type of cancer in your life, and you just hope it's like a very treatable or early stage one that can just be cured easily. And so that's why you really, really want to stick with all your surveillances. I think if any takeaway point, just make sure you're doing this, because you could prevent or catch early.
Yeah. And to come back to your question again, speak up for yourself. The patients, sometimes they're worried not to ask questions. Ask questions. Be advocate for yourself. Be partner for your care. It's exactly. We always encourage that.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Dr. Militello, Dr. Finan, your insight, your compassion really does show, not only caring for your patients and through their treatment, but also through their entire journey and their survivorship. So we just truly appreciate you being here today. On behalf of the Advocate and everyone who's watching, thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Having